There was this man named Jim. Now, Jim grew up in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina. And he said he was the oldest of 5 brothers and sisters. And they lived in this older home situated in the middle of the woods, surrounded by the mountains. Now, he said this one particular night, his father put him in charge of watching his brothers and sisters. And so his father left, and several hours had passed. Him and his brothers and sisters, they were playing a game of tag, running around the house, when all of a sudden they hear the doorbell ring. So they all go up to the front door. They look out the window. There's nobody out there. So they're like, who was that? So they go back to playing. And after about 15, 20 minutes, once again, they hear the doorbell. They go and look out the window. There's no one there. So they go back to playing again. And once again, the doorbell rings. So this time, Jim goes to the door and he opens it and he goes, "Quit playing around." He looks out there and there is like absolutely no one. And he said he just remembered, like all of a sudden, this very bad stench just poured into the house. And he said it almost made him gag. And he thought, that's really weird. Like there's no one there. So he closes the door and they all go into the living room. Well, his brother goes into the kitchen and is in there for about 5 minutes when all of a sudden he comes running out, screaming, crying, and he runs right into his bedroom and jumps on the bed. So Jim goes to check on him and see what's wrong. And when he gets in his brother's room, he can see that like he's very frantic and just, upset by something. So Jim sits down on his bed and is like, "Hey, what's going on? Like, why are you crying?" And he couldn't get his little brother to talk about like what was going on. He said finally his brother, after about 5-10 minutes, says, "I was in the kitchen and I looked out the window. There was this big, tall, hairy monster and it was waving at me to come outside." And right as he's telling him that story, Jim said he looked out his brother's window and he sees the shadow of something very large just move. And so he tells his brother, like, get out of the room. And he gets his brothers and sisters and he puts them all into the parents' room. But he said right at that moment they could hear stuff like running around the house and they could hear all this noise outside and banging on the windows and the doors. And he said then it stopped. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, he said he hears this frantic banging on the front door. So Jim gets up the courage. He goes to his father's office and he grabs his rifle. He goes to the door, and when he looks out the window, he sees that it's his neighbor. So he opens the door, and the neighbor comes running in and is all frantic and is like, "Where are the kids? Where's everybody? Like, are you guys all right? I'm staying with you till your dad gets back." And Jim was kind of confused, like, why is the neighbor here? Why is he panicking? Well, shortly after this, his father comes home, and his father and the neighbor go into the other room. Jim overhears them talking, and the neighbor is basically saying to the father, like, "I was looking out my window when I seen like several large looking men that weren't human running around your house, and I knew the kids were alone. So I ran over there immediately, and one of these things, whatever it was, it chased me." So Jim's father and the neighbor, they get some rifles and they go outside. They tell the kids to lock themselves in the bedroom. And he said all night long they could hear just, loud bangs and booms, and shots being fired. And he said the next morning his father came in, had this blank stare on his face, and just slowly shuffled onto the couch. And he asked his father, like, what was that last night? Like, what happened? And his dad looked at him and said, "I never want to speak about what I seen out there." And he said still to this day, he has no clue what it is that his father seen